Good morning. This is meeting number 16 of the Metropolitan Outer Joint Development Assessment Panel. My name is Ian Birch. I'm the presiding member. Sitting alongside me is Tony Aris, who is the deputy presiding member. And online we have Nima Premji, who is the specialist member. And for the City of Wanneroo, we have Councillor Jackie Huntley. Councillor Bronwyn Smith has been having difficulty getting in, but we have a quorum, so we can continue. That was the reason for the delay in getting this meeting started. We have 3 items on the agenda, but at present we've just got the City of Wanneroo panel here. So with that, I will declare the meeting open and acknowledge traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present of the land on which the meeting is being held. I've mentioned the panel members. Some, just for information, some panel members may be referring to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. And the meeting will be recorded and live streamed in accordance with Regulation 40(2)(a). Next item is apologies. We have an apology from Councillor David Bolt, who is from the Shire of Murray. Members on leave of absence. We have no members on leave of absence. Noting of minutes. Minutes of previous meetings are available on the MODAP website. We can now move to part B of the agenda, which is the City of Wanneroo item. And I've introduced all the panel members there. We have officers Greg Baring and Rhiannon McQuillan. And applicants and submitters Ingrid Van Dawson and Regan Cake. Here. Thank you. So with that, firstly, panel members, can I ask that you can confirm that you're familiar with this substance of reports and information provided for this item? Thank you. Everyone's making that declaration. Next item is disclosure of interests. Haven't received any disclosures. Any late disclosures? No? Thank you. So we can now move to the item, which is for number 63, number 65, Lot 2, Salcott Road, Girraween, proposed residential building. Received a deputation request from Regan Cake and Ingrid Van Dawson. So if you could join us, please.
Thanks, panel members. Won't keep you too long today. It's we've done a lot of work with the City of Wanneroo to date to get to a position where I think both parties, applicant and the city, are happy with the proposal. We want to obviously express our support for the officer recommendation and confirm we've got no issues or concerns with any of the proposed conditions of approval. We do appreciate the city's work on this one to date, and we've did do a lot of work sort of prior to lodgement around land use, making them comfortable with the development proposal as well, because at times I think the planning framework struggles to appropriately classify, fit and assess residential building proposals for community housing. And we've come across that issue on a number of different applications. But the city's done a great job in I guess, firstly classifying it, which was supported with some legal advice and some other projects that Uniting WA have done in other local government areas as well. And obviously the logic behind the land use classification is set out in the city's RAR, which we concur with, and then put in our assessment and report to them as well. The proposal itself is essentially 10 individual sort of self-contained rooms as part of a larger holistic development with communal parking, communal facilities that all share services provided by Uniting WA. The development itself was architecturally designed by Nick Bruns and Architects, and the intent or objective was to produce a low-cost construction product, but also a low-cost operationally in terms of your sustainable design, minimising reliance on artificial heating and cooling and all that sort of stuff. So the development itself has been designed really well, and we think it's going to have great longevity and be a low-cost development into the future. The I guess segment of the community that the project will appeal to will be touched on, I guess, in a little bit more detail by Ingrid, but it's of paramount importance that this type of housing is delivered in the current housing market. It's sort of the last stopgap for homelessness, essentially, and the services that Uniting WA really, I guess, provide ongoing light touch services that assist in, I guess, occupants of the development reintegrating into the community, which is very important. As far as compliance with the applicable planning framework is concerned, it's somewhat unique in terms of how this proposal is assessed against the R codes, because the traditional requirements is that it's a single dwelling, group dwelling, multiple dwelling assessment. The residential building development doesn't, I guess, traditionally fit into those land use classifications, and as such, the built form controls aren't always applicable. So I think the city's approach with using those controls to determine the impact on adjoining properties and everything like that and assess the outcome has been the correct one, and obviously we concur with the assessment that's in the RAR. That's probably it from me. I'll hand over to Ingrid to touch on a little bit more about what Uniting WA does and the intended occupants of the development and the services going to be provided. Thank you.
Sorry, Regan, just before you start, Councillor Smith has now joined us. We can see you, Councillor Smith. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Now, just if you could indicate that you are familiar with the substance of report information provided.
Yes, I am. Thank you. And sincere apologies for the technical difficulties.
That's all right. Now, we're dealing with the Wanneroo item now, and we've just got the presentations from the applicants, as you probably picked up. So,
yeah.
Regan, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Regan. Morning, panel members and officers of the city. My name's Ingrid Van Dorsen. I'm project manager at Uniting WA. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about Uniting, what we do and how this project came about. So Uniting WA are one of the leading community housing and service providers in WA. We look after thousands of vulnerable people every day. Our service programs include looking after people formerly homeless or who are homeless in our engagement hubs, also mental health and disability support, family and children's services, victims of domestic violence and reintegration services. So a little bit about this project. This proposal forms part of our Aspirations Housing project. We have 2 properties at the moment and proposals of similar built form, and it's the same development in 2 locations, in Girraween and Bentley. And this proposal came about where we identified a gap in the community housing continuum or social housing continuum, where there's people in social housing that still need support, people exiting transitional housing who would then typically go on to potentially get Department of Communities or permanent housing, but they still need a little bit of support. As you know, there are some issues in social housing where it's just Department of Communities housing, and people need, there's issues, there's antisocial behaviour, and some people just need that ongoing support. Like, they don't need to be in our transitional housing facilities with sort of more round the clock support, and that's transitional, but they need permanent housing with a little bit of, support to help them integrate with the community and live independently and access, have opportunities for jobs and whatever help they need. So that's I think if you have seen my presentation summary, there's a little graphic there that shows the housing continuum and where we sit. So we see this as a really vital and innovative form of community housing, and it has been purposefully designed to meet the needs of the people that will live there. So the people coming into this facility will be exiting transitional housing predominantly, so mostly probably formerly homeless, and they've been in our transitional housing facilities, which are sort of 9 to 12 months generally, or until they can find permanent accommodation. And so it will be a referral pathway. They've already had a lot of support, and we'll identify them as being suitable for this property in a residential area. Sort of coming in, it's like it's a referral process, and we'll determine the suitability. They'll have a case management worker. They'll be subject to residential tenancy agreements and all that sort of thing. And what else can I say about this proposal? Yeah, that's probably. Oh, I was just going to talk a little bit on the future development plans for the other side of the site, just in case you had any questions about that. So as you can see, this proposal is just sort of a stage 1 development for the western portion of the site. Something else about this property, it actually has a Department of Housing caveat over it. So at the moment it's for church purposes, but we've engaged with the department about amending that caveat for community housing or social housing purposes. So there is a requirement to deliver that on this site and the property be used for that purpose. So Department of Housing are happy with that. We just haven't finalised the paperwork. Property is currently owned by Uniting Church, and we've been delivering. Formerly, we had an outreach centre there, Uniting WA. We're delivering outreach services there to the community. It's currently vacant, but we'd like to redevelop it for community housing. So this is our stage 1 for the western portion, and we're anticipating a subdivision into 2 lots. And on the other side, we have in mind, but it's not confirmed, a supported independent living development, so possibly 2 grouped dwellings with for people with disabilities. That's sort of what, just to have, not confirmed, but that's sort of what we had in mind if you did have questions around the vacant portion of the lot. But it will be for community housing uses. I'd anticipate not the intensity of this one. This one, with the 10 self-contained accommodation units is, we've just determined that to be the maximum number that we think our operation model, number of people it can support in that location. So the other side would be, we've sort of thought maybe 2 group dwellings or something to that effect, but not any greater intensity. Again, we'll have a community housing caveat over the site, so there's no risk of it being subdivided or green title or anything like that in terms of the development. It will be used for that purpose in perpetuity. That's all from me. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of the presenters? Yes.
Ingrid, thank you for the presentation. I think both you and Reagan indicated how important a use like this is, and it's clearly necessary in the current environment. Integrating into the community, being well received is not only important for this project, but I presume there are other projects. I notice in the RAR there is a operation management plan.
Yes.
But there's not a condition, and it is a question for the city's officers as well. When panels have dealt with workforce accommodation, it's an important part in terms of being good community citizens and integrating. Would you have a problem if there was a condition, just so that rather than, because it is important, the management of this facility is really critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I said, if there's going to be support for similar ones, how it's managed is the test.
Yep.
So I notice you've already done.
Yes, we have. Yes,
and I think that addresses the issues, but making it a condition is probably going to make it a bit more robust in terms of how it's managed.
Yeah, we would have no objection at all to that. So we would like the condition, if there is a condition, that is a draft operations management plan. So if it could be like a revise in the condition, give us opportunity to prepare a revised one for approval of the city, sort of, and then to be implemented.
And that's something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely no objection to that at all. And I will just note we have a similar proposal coming up to the DAP next week for our Bentley development to the Metro Inner, and there is a condition in there, or proposed condition in the RAR around, we did a similar application and provide an operations management plan, and they did include the condition in their RAR, just to note, but no objection. And that was our intent, would be to, and our understanding that we would be submitting a revised operation management plan prior to occupancy. I'm happy to have that as a condition as well. That would be done as well.
Thank you. Regan, you've probably already got some words for that condition, haven't you? Did you write the other
We'll
one?
pull up the agenda for
Yeah,
next
we
week
could
if you like.
copy the recommendation if you like.
Well, but we'll just go, Greg or Rhiannon, who's going to speak? Greg?
Through you, presiding member. We can specifically considered whether or not the management plan should form a condition of approval in dealing with the application, form the view that it wasn't relevant to the planning merits of the proposal. The operating usage of a residential building or a residence is not a condition that we would apply on grouped housing, multiple dwellings, or any other form of residential dwelling. This is not a commercial use, it's a residential building. We don't see any relevance to the city being involved in enforcing any of these matters as a condition of the residential use of the building. We fundamentally disagree that it should be a condition of approval, and we don't see how we could enforce it.
Thank you. Did you have any questions?
Yeah, I think I understand, strictly speaking, from the city's perspective, and I understand the reluctance in wanting to manage and enforce it, but this in terms of a residential building, it probably doesn't neatly fit into that classification, and I think, as the applicants indicated, it's more about community housing. And given there's that sort of transition, I don't know, and it might, given there were a couple of issues raised through the advertising about parking, about noise, and I don't see that it's an onerous requirement and something that provides a commitment to the applicant in terms of managing forward.
Okay. Anyway, Mr. Bowring, you've given your answer. I don't know whether you want to expand any. I think it was pretty categorical. So
Yep,
there'll be the opportunity
Yep.
to consider that. Any further questions? It's not necessarily related to this. You've got a big job ahead, and
Government could hand out a bit more money, be nice.
so is this one of many that you're hoping to?
Yes, so this is, we have got a few developments on the go, but Aspirations Housing we have developed as what we're hoping to be a replicable model. So we have identified in working with the church, as just an opportunity to get access to some of their land and then redevelop it. So it's underutilised land for us to redevelop. Either long-term leases would be one way when we're looking at potentially purchasing, otherwise we'll sign a long-term lease. But yeah, no, it's a great proposal, and yeah, Uniting genuinely deliver such amazing services to our community in terms of community housing. I just would note that we have an existing facility in South Fremantle that yeah, it's amazing what a difference purpose-built accommodation can do when people have the support they need, and there's absolutely no issues with neighbours or anything, and there's no issues with council. There's no, yeah, it's such an amazing facility. So Uniting do a wonderful job. So hope to give you that comfort. And in terms of the operations management plan, I know we will have one, and we will follow it ourselves. And yeah, we follow also the community housing provider regulatory framework as well. But yeah, if happy to have it as a condition, or if it's not included, we will be operating in accordance with our own operations management plan as we need to.
Thank you. There's no further questions of the presenters. Greg, did you have any comment you wish to make? And then we'll see if there's any questions of yourself.
No, we found the proposal to be pretty well put together. The DRP advice was pretty well received and addressed by the applicant in the revisions. The advertised version had a slight parking shortfall, one bay, that was rectified following advertising to comply with the parking standards of the scheme. Building height orientation to the park and the residential streets is good. Minimal cut and fill, or equal cut and fill really across the site. minimising sort of any external impacts. The only boundary wall abuts another boundary wall to the southern side, which has no impact on that residential property to the south. So overall, we think that it's quite a good design resolution.
We've lost you, Greg.
You've lost me? Can you hear me now?
Oh, the last words I heard were any boundary wall.
So the boundary wall adjoins an existing boundary wall to the southern side. So there's no impact on that adjoining property to the south. And the buildings relate well to the POS Hainsworth Park, which is an active sports ground adjoining I think it's a primary school, and the streetscape is well addressed as well. So yeah, overall, the built form is appropriate for the location.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Bowring? No? Okay, thank you. We'll move to the item, which is, say, for number 65, Lot 2, Salcott Road in Girraween, proposed residential building. We have a responsible authority report which recommends that we approve the application subject to a number of conditions. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the proposal? That's moved Councillor Huntley. Thank you. Seconded Councillor Smith. Councillor Huntley as the mover, used to speak.
Yes. Looking on this, I was actually very, very pleased to see the work that's been put in and to actually see these small apartments coming along now, but with the fact that you're going to retain some trees, which I think is absolutely marvellous. And I do like the idea of the landscaping that you plan to put around. I think aesthetically it is so important to get that landscaping right, because in 50 years' time, if it's wrong, this will become a real concrete jungle. So it will be lovely to make sure that that landscaping works. Other than that, it's a good proposal. It fits well with the neighbours. That was one of my first things to look at, where these boundaries are going to go, and yeah, look quite happy. I think if you can keep it so that it has no imposition on the residents, then these will become a good thing to put in these residential areas, and it certainly gives that step up, and so nice to see them looking good as well. So yeah, I'm happy to move this, and also I'm happy with Greg's decision on that condition. I don't think that condition needs to be imposed at this stage anyway. Certainly I'm happy with Greg's response.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Very happy to support and like the initiative and that it's potentially rolling out. I'm comfortable as well without the condition being there, knowing that it seems like it's in the Bentley one and things like that. So different people have the ability, but also really happy that Uniting West were willing to have it. So happy to accept the proposal as is.
Nima, I'll go to you. Did you wish to speak to the item?
I'm very happy to say that I support the mover and the seconder. And no, I don't have any questions. And with regard to the operations management plan for Uniting, it would be in their own best interest, as Ingrid has said, that they have to follow a business model, they have to do an operations management plan, etc. So I'm happy that, we don't need to impose such a condition at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arias.
Likewise, I'm happy to support the motion. I think it's an important and necessary use. I'm glad the city is supporting it. I think from a planning perspective, it does fit into the planning framework. I did, in questions, raise the issue of an operation management plan. I think the management of this is critical to the success and the reaction to other similar proposals which will occur. So I would foreshadow, it looks like it may not get support, but I will foreshadow a proposed condition requiring an operation management plan. The applicant indicated willingness to comply with that, and I think it will help integration into the community. So, as I said, I will foreshadow a condition to that effect.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also supporting the application, and congratulations to Uniting for what is an absolutely essential service, and it's a classic case of, and not that it hasn't been around for a long time, but maybe it's being considered more seriously now. But as community changes, it's a very, very necessary land use. And also, thank you to the Shire officers for a very sensible approach to assessing the application. The absence of planning rules, maybe the planning system could catch up there, although I say that with some caution, and that I hope if we do catch up, that it doesn't become too cumbersome, that it gets in the way of providing these very necessary uses. Yeah, no hesitation in supporting it. In relation to the management plan, I understand fully where Mr. Aris is coming from. I suppose the only thing that crosses my mind is whether in this case, whether the planning process is the best way to maybe deal with any management issues that might arise, because enforcement can be a fairly cumbersome process. I will accept Mr. Bowring's response in that regard. So with that, I will. Did you wish to?
Yeah, look, I don't want to prolong the process any longer than necessary. I do feel that it is a necessary requirement. Whilst it is within the categorisation of a residential building, it is an unusual and innovative use, and I think it needs to be managed accordingly. So I'll put the motion. I move that a new condition be imposed along the following lines: preparation of a revised operation management plan to the satisfaction of the city will address the following components: parking, staffing and management personnel, hours of operation, safety and security, and waste management.
Thank you. Everyone clear on that proposal? Do I have a seconder? No, that lapses for want of a seconder. Thank you. So now, Councillor Huntley, I'll move back to you as the mover of the motion to close debate.
Yeah, I'm happy, and yeah, I'm wishing United all the best with it.
Thank you very much. So I'll put that motion as presented here today. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you to the City of Wanneroo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so everyone. Thank you. So we now have elected members from the city of Kwinana joining us, which is Councillor Matthew Rouse. You just shifted spot on the screen. And Councillor Barry Winmar. Welcome. Before we get going, just need to confirm that you are familiar with the substance of reports and information provided.
Yes, I am.
For the item today.
Yes, I am. That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have from the city of Wanneroo, Kwinana, we have Asha Logan and Sarah Sylvester, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we have an item here for number 2, lot 541 in Ocean View, Mandogalup, for a childcare centre. Received a deputation request from Mr. Alessandro Stagno from Apex Planning, and we've also got Arthur Majewski from Cube Property. Would you like to come forward and give your presentation? Experiencing deja vu.
Do my deputation for me. Thank you very much. Good morning, panel members and local government officers. I'm Alessandro Stagno from Apex Planning. I'm the applicant of the childcare centre that's proposed at number 2 Ovens View in Apsley Estate, joined by Mr. Arthur Majewski of Q Property, the representative of the landowner. It's a pretty straightforward proposal, not a heap to say about it. The city's RAR is comprehensive and articulates sound reasoning for why it's recommended for approval. I circulated a written submission earlier in the week requesting changes to 2 conditions. We've seen the Reg 13 request and the city's response to that. I won't rabbit on about it, but I will provide a further response to the city's responses. So in relation to condition 15, which relates to the reversing bay, we had some concerns around the usability and the functionality of the bay, especially given things like bollards would be proposed, which would reduce the amount of space available for parents using that bay, especially in the peak morning periods. Another issue that's been identified is that the reversing bay is actually necessary for movement of waste vehicles. On page 59 of the RAR, there's swept path diagrams that are contained within the transport impact statement. And the swept path diagrams do show that the waste truck does need to go all the way into the reversing bay in order to perform that movement out and then to be able to exit the site in forward gear. So the applicant's preference would certainly be to go with the wording that we've proposed and requested in our submission. In relation to condition 17, the bushfire emergency evacuation plan, my interpretation of the city's response there was that they've conceded that it's not a requirement under the applicable planning framework. And it's certainly our opinion that it's at the discretion of the operator whether they choose to do such a document, particularly in relation to any regulatory requirements under the childcare services regulations. Yeah, so in a nutshell, that's our response to the latest in terms of the condition requests. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that the panel has.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of the presenters?
Just presiding member. So you've indicated that the reversing lane is actually important for manoeuvring of waste vehicles. In the event someone is parked there, because it's a convenient place to park, how do you deal with that? And I guess that the reason for the condition is to avoid exactly that. Isn't there an engineering solution with bollards that provide for sort of traversing over bollards that will prevent people parking, parents parking that location?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we certainly understand the rationale and the intent of the condition. we would prefer to go away from structures like bollards, just because there is a risk of, you know, vehicle damage and whatnot. Wheel stops are probably a much better method to deal with that, but we do believe that in the first instance, good management of the reversing bay would be the critical factor. There is a parking management plan that's required under condition 5, and at the time of induction, a key measure in that parking management plan would be for parents to be advised not to utilise the reversing bay for unauthorised purposes, and then the centre manager would observe and control the use of the reversing bay on a daily basis as well. That would certainly be the preference.
I can appreciate the city's reluctance, because in the heat of the moment when parents are trying to drop off kids, and it is on not a quiet road, reversing out is not an option. So some management, physical management is probably required. But maybe it's whether there's an alternative to what you've suggested, because I think indicating no parking on the bay is probably not satisfactory. As I said, in the heat of the moment, someone will park there, which creates a problem for the whole circulation. But maybe it's a question of the officers in terms of whether there is some other alternative to the bollards.
Yeah, perhaps while we're talking about this, can I go to the officers? Well, one of the questions in my mind is I would have thought the parents would want to use it as well. And if there's a bollard there, they can't, they've got to reverse out. You've obviously thought through all that. Can you just explain the rationale for, and understand the reason for wanting people not to park there? But I was just confused as to how it would work, do it, serve its intended purpose if it's blocked off at certain times.
Yeah, so do you mean that the parents may want to use it for parking and drop off?
No, for getting out of in a forward direction. Isn't that what the bay is for?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So the idea would be that a wheel stop or a bollard, and bollard could be a retractable bollard as well, one that can be put down in the ground for purposes of waste management. It would be that the bollard or wheel stop would be positioned. We provided the swept path diagram that showed about 5 metres into the bay, so that a car can still come into the bay quite far before reaching the wheel stop or bollard, and then so they pull into it forward, reverse backwards, and then be able to exit the car park in forward gear. So the idea would be that to prevent anyone from parking in it for any period of time, and that's where we think the physical barrier helps in that regard, for exactly that reason, that we don't want it obstructed by any vehicle. We want it kept as clear, we want it kept open so that cars can use it to come in and go backwards if they do that in turns to be able to reverse out of the car park. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. What vehicle was, what swept path? There's some pretty large vehicles nowadays.
So the one that we provided in the response to the R18 was, I think it was 85th percentile vehicle. So it is there is larger vehicles would also be able to work in that, but that's where we've put in the specific positioning of the bollard or the wheel stop could be dealt with at building permit stage when we've got some time to actually look at the drawings.
Thank you. I'd just like to stick on this for a moment. So how would you see it managed?
So at the time of induction, parents are advised the reversing bay is only to be used for reversing. Centre manager to observe and control the use of the car park on an ongoing basis. The reversing bay would be line marked, and it would also be signposted, and we'd rely on the honour system of people doing the right thing, given the clear communication. One concern that we also have is, given that the swept path produced by the city was based on a B85 vehicle, that wouldn't really cover, larger vehicles that people typically drive, like a Land Cruiser, for example, which is a bit longer than a typical sort of vehicle, and a lot of mums and dads do tend to drive, larger four-wheel drives if they have multiple children. So just do have some concerns around the functionality there. if the condition as proposed by the city is to be retained, we would prefer for bollards to be removed, and wheel stops would be the preferred kind of treatment there.
Presiding member, if just thinking, it really is not a matter for us to determine, it's a matter for the applicant and the city to work out. But if the words and some other mechanism, which so we don't get caught up with it's a bollard or wheel stop, but it's something that enables a functionality but addresses the concerns that the city has, which I think are fair and reasonable, is that something that you would, and I haven't put it to the city, but is that something that, so you work that out together?
Yeah, we have a problem with that.
Asha, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, we'd be happy with that. That's what we anticipate, that we want to keep the functionality as much as possible for the vehicles that are going to use it, but also have that preventative measure there. So we're happy to work to see what's the best option.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that.
The condition is not mightn't be quite as certain, but at least it provides some, well, the alternative we're talking about, it does provide some flexibility there to negotiate something with that satisfies, and obviously it has to be satisfaction of the local authority. Okay, thank you. Now where were we? We were still any further questions of the presenters?
Look, question around condition 17. I think the response from the city indicates that they accept it's not a mandatory requirement, but conscious that the use, and we've got children in this facility, I think the council officers accept that some way of dealing with fire safety is necessary. And my view, it is given the use, even though it may not be a mandatory requirement. How do you sort of respond to that?
Emergency evacuation plans of different kinds are actually already required under the childcare regulations. So it's already covered under a separate legislative sphere, and it'll be prepared regardless. It's probably not an issue to be dealt with through the planning framework at this point, given it's not specifically required under state planning policy 3.7.
Okay, so it's covered through those regulations?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll be preparing one anyway?
The operator.
Someone will be preparing,
yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions of the presenters? City officers, Asha, did you wish to? Did you have a question sorry, Nima, did you have a question of the presenters?
Oh, no. I was just going to say that with condition 17, I agree with the comments that have been made, and with the condition 15, I just wanted to ask the presenter, you are very particular about having the wheel stoppers, but you are willing to have a look at other avenues in order to make sure that the outcome is achieved?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps if I can just ask Asha or Sarah to maybe work on some words, and if we get for that amendment to condition 15, and if we do get someone that wants to move an amendment, then we'll be prepared. And while one of you is doing that, Councillor Rouse.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question in regards to condition 17. The proponent mentioned that there'd be emergency evacuation plans under the various legislation. Does that take into account individual circumstances, as opposed considering this is in a bushfire prone area? We've seen some very intense fires during the northern corridor of Kwinana over the last few years, and noting that there is only one access, one regress point and an emergency regress point. So just basically, does it take into account individual circumstances, individual areas, or is it all just one encompassing evacuation plan?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Raz. I don't know the specific details of it, but I would expect that it would cover, the second. It's an individual license that's being sought for this particular centre, so I would expect that it would address whatever the particular circumstances of this particular centre are.
Thank you.
I would also probably just add, I believe that the bushfire prone mapping is out of date, and that's the reason why there is a bit of purple covering the site, because when you look at the current aerial imagery versus the DFES imagery, there's a bit of a difference between the dates of the aerial mapping, and there's a lot less vegetation around the site now because the estate is in the process of being developed.
Yeah, yes, the estate has been cleared, so I understand the low bell for the actual facility, but it's the bushland surrounding the estate and other associated areas there. So as we saw in the bushfires in Casuarina, nearly jumped the freeway to that area there, and also the bushfires in Anketil recently. So yeah, that's my concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Winmar.
Yeah, look, I sort of echo those sentiments and concerns. It's okay to have a evacuation plan under the Child Safety Act, but that pertains to that particular evacuation of that facility. The bushfire plans and the BAL rating is, as Councillor Rouse alluded to, relates to the particular area. If there is the case, and it has happened in the north in Bullsbrook, where fire spread quickly and jumped across, and large facilities like nursing homes and childcare centres have been affected, I wouldn't want to leave the council to be exposed to a position of who's going to be liable if there's any issues with egress and egress en route to get in and out of that particular facility. And I still would want to be satisfied that there was going to be an opportunity to have some sort of compliance or adherence to the policy. And we know it's not mandatory, but especially with leaving the facility.
Thank you. Look, I'm sorry for butting in, but we're actually just dealing with questions at the moment. We're sort of debating the item. When we get to the item, that dreaded internet is unstable sign just came up. So hopefully we'll still be able to hear you. Yeah, when we get to the item, if somebody wants to move an amendment, then there'll be the opportunity to talk. And the request is to delete the condition. If somebody does move that and it's seconded, then there'll be the opportunity to raise the points that yourself and some of the other panel members have raised. So we'll leave that for that if that indeed arises. So, sorry, Ashley, was there anything else you wanted to add in relation to the your responsible authority report and the discussion we've had this morning?
No, not particularly. I think got some alternative wording for condition 15 and this response on condition 17. No change in that regard.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no further questions, we'll move to the item, which is, as I said, for number 2, lot 541, Ovens View, Mandogla, for a childcare centre. We have a responsible authority report to approve the application subject to a number of conditions. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Movers and seconders. Moved Councillor Rouse, seconded Councillor Winmar. Thank you. Councillor Rouse is the mover.
You're on mute, Matt, sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I was on mute because of my dogs. I'm quite happy with the development as overall. The submissions are mostly in support and indicate an actual need for the facility within the area. It's a growing area of many young families. Obviously, there's the usual sound issues and traffic issues, but they're encountered with all other childcare centres that we've dealt with, the many childcare centres that we've dealt with the city of Kwinana recently. And so this complies with all those conditions and the parking conditions as well. In regards to condition 15, the reversing bay, the proponent mentioned the honour system. Unfortunately, in certain times, the honour system does not work, and as much as we'd like to think that the parents would heed those warnings from the management centre, those plans at that time may not be adequate. So it'd be nice if the condition remains the same with some varied wording that the city can provide, that the proponent and the city can work together to come up with the best possible outcomes to ensure that the functionality of that parking. In regards to item 17, condition 17, as Councillor Winmar and myself sort of expressed, we know the area very well. It is potential for an extreme bushfire risk to the east and to the west of the site. As we know that although it's a BAL low rating there, they're not, the proponent's probably not required under the SPP 3.7 to prepare an emergency evacuation plan, but I would like to see some site-specific, estate-specific plan drawn up with the satisfaction of the city, who the city officers know the area, so if they could work with the proponent, I'd like to see that. But I guess condition 17 could be deleted, as it's not a mandatory requirement, but I would like to see the proponent work with the city to come up with a satisfactory outcome for an evacuation plan. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Winmar as the seconder.
Yeah, no, I concur with those views, and as expressed before, it's just in relation to ensuring that there is a plan in place and to the satisfaction of the council. Yeah, happy to support the Councillor Rouse in the motion.
Thank you. Nima, I'll go to you. Did you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, I'm happy for the wordings of the condition 15 to get where the proponent and the council can work to make sure that at the end of the day, the outcome that they're looking for in terms of reversing and providing that pathway is achieved. Condition 17, I do agree that it's very difficult to enforce a third party condition. However, I am quite sure that the proponent and the Shire, the council, will work to make sure that besides the emergency evacuation plan that needs to be developed under other legislation, that there is a bushfire management plan for that particular site. So I'm happy to support that. On the there's an administrative error. Conditions 9, 10, and 11. They're not. I think something must be wrong with the numbering, but I think that can be fixed up by the council or the secretariat after. But the conditions 9, 10, and 11 numbers are missing there. But other than that, yes, I am supportive of the motion that has been put forward by Councillor Rouse and seconded by Councillor Winmar.
Thank you. Yes, so that can be fixed administratively. Yep. Looks like a case of 3 conditions that were decided they weren't necessary, and someone forgot the renumbering didn't happen. Mr. Arias, did you speak?
Look, I'm happy to support the motion as well. I think in terms of the planning framework, it's a discretionary use, and I, based on that, happy to support that. The location itself, probably from a pure residential perspective, is a difficult site on a major road, on a roundabout. So, but it's probably suitable for the proposed use for a childcare site, given it is on a significant road, opposite a bit of open space and roundabout. I think those constraints can be planned out. I did note that through the submission, there was concerns about additional traffic, which there will be additional traffic, but the traffic impact statement indicates it's not going to be significant. And in any event, Quartermain Boulevard's been designed to accommodate that. So I think that can be addressed. So I think overall happy to support the proposal, and I'm happy to support a change to condition 15 that provides a bit of flexibility that can be resolved in terms of whatever the mechanism is between the applicant and the city's officers.
Did you want to move an amendment?
Yes, I'm happy to move an amendment to condition 15. Now, I think the officers indicated they might have had some revised wording.
Yeah, I think bollard or wheel stop are probably the two options that would work. But after wheel stop, you could insert the wording or other mechanism if you want to leave that open. So it would read, the reversing bay must be kept clear at all times and installed with a bollard, comma, wheel stop or other mechanism designed to prevent parking and maintain the functionality of the reversing bay to the satisfaction of the City of Kwinana. Does that allow that flexibility?
Presiding member, I'm happy to move the insertion of those words or other mechanism. So, and the reason for that is just to provide flexibility in terms of suitable mechanisms.
Thank you. Councillor Rouse, were you seconding that motion?
Yes. No, second that.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak to that motion? Okay, did you wish to close?
No, no further comment.
So I'll put that amendment. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Did you have anything further to say on the application? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm also supporting the application, and Councillor Rouse, as I'm sure you're aware, the city is no orphan in having received a lot of applications for childcare centres. Obviously, again, in the world we live in now, very important and necessary and expanding use that we have to deal with. And this is very comfortable with the assessment and the recommendation for approval with the conditions. So with that, I will move back to you, Councillor Rouse, to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member, and thank you, panel members and the promoter and city officers for taking the time out today. As you reiterated, childcare centres are a very important need in our growing community here in Kwinana. So I'm happy to support this motion with those amendments. So nothing further.
Thank you. So I'll put that motion with that one amendment. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much to the City of Kwinana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speed up the meeting, aren't you?
Yeah, that is. Thank
you.
All right. You got the
Luke, have a number of people listed with you. I can only see yourself. I think it's, yeah. And see Councillor Rogers at the end. The others joining us?
We were having a number of representatives that we're going to view online, more for educational purposes and information, but we've now got our Director of of Development Services, Rod Peake, has entered the room.
Okay.
Some are online, but haven't joined as panelists.
Okay, that's all
If
right.
we do.
That's fine. And we've got Joe Algieri and Jaden Pope from Altus Planning and John Hurley from EAQ Consulting.
John will be joined online.
John's on, oh, sorry, it does say he's online, but he's not there just
He's
yet.
online, just hasn't.
Oh, okay.
Accept the promotion
Is
panelist.
he going to be wanting to speak or just if?
Only if there's questions of a technical
Okay.
nature.
All right. Thank you. So welcome everyone. Councillor, this is for item part D for the city of, the Shire of Murray. It's for number 320, lot 9500 Gull Road in Kerala for a proposed noxious industry carbon recycling facility. Councillor Ange Rogers has joined us. Councillor Rogers, can see you in the distance.
Thank you.
But we can hear you. Councillor Rogers, I need to ask you if you have given due consideration to this item and all the matters provided in relation to it.
Yes, I have.
You have, thank you very much. Next item is disclosure of interest. I mentioned that there's an apology from Councillor Bolt. Councillor Bolt has declared an interest as he chairs a regional council whose members have existing waste agreements with an unrelated company who are currently building a waste to energy plant in Kwinana. Councillor Bolt also has noted that Seawise, who are the proponents, provide waste services for the Shire, of which he's president. He's the Shire president, and on this basis, Councillor Bolt has withdrawn from the matter. He has considered that his interest in his position as president of the Shire and also on the regional council, that there would be could be a perception that he might not be totally impartial, although he assures us he would be, but he felt that it would be appropriate that he withdrew from the matter, and that's, I've accepted that as presiding member. So with that, the next, we move to the item itself, and we have a request from Joe Algieri from Altus Planning. And Algieri, you have asked for 5 minutes. We have received, as you're probably aware, we have received your presentation, so we've had the opportunity to see it.
Thank you, presiding member, and good morning. I'm Director of Altus Planning. We are planning consultants assisting the applicant Seawise, and I'm joined with me by Jaden Pope, Senior Planner, who is the principal author of the Planning Justification Report. In brief, we are pleased to be speaking to you today in support of the recommendation and the content of the RAR submitted by the Shire of Murray. We submit that it's an application or a development of merit, and therefore we agree it can and should be conditionally approved. As you're no doubt aware, Seawise is the operator of a facility down the track. It's a little bit confusing because they're currently at 230 Gull Road, and this is at 320 Gull Road in Kirilup instead of Nambilup. In essence, this application seeks to relocate, and not all at once, but to transition to the new site, whereby there will be the latest technology in accordance with better practice industry guidelines. And that's an important point, because it's easy enough just to look at the throughputs and the tonnages and think, well, if it's slightly more, there's going to be bigger problems. But it's really important that we emphasise that by incorporating the latest technology, that should dispel some of the myths, or at least address some of the concerns, which I'll get to it in a moment. As noted on page 27 of the RA, there's been a number of supporting documents. I won't go through all of them, but the important ones are odour impact assessment, a fairly comprehensive environmental assessment and management plan, a surface water and leachate management plan, various bushfire plans, a TIS or a transport impact statement, and furthermore, as a result of or the recommendation of the RA, there are numerous conditions, and this is also very important, that require, including but not limited to, a fauna protection and relocation management plan, wetland management plan, a waste management plan, a biofilter management plan, an odour complaint management plan, and an odour management contingency plan. So the only two issues I really need to touch upon, as per my written submission, are bushfire. And in essence, the proposal is incorporating a number of measures to be incorporated as a performance solution, which on their own probably wouldn't be sufficient, but in combination, we wholly agree with the Shire that there is a way forward. And certainly in respect to the emergency access way, there are plans afoot for essentially a road extension which will resolve the problem over time. But until then, and as an interim arrangement, the Shire themselves are looking to construct an emergency access way that basically takes us to Yangetti Road. There's nothing academic about that because until that is constructed, operations cannot commence. More significantly, and as per the 83 submissions, perhaps the principal issue has been with respect to odour. Can I say the bleeding obvious at the outset, and that is the proposal should be considered distinct from any concerns with the current operations, particularly immediately adjacent to piggery, mushroom farm. I couldn't imagine the advertising occurring at a more problematic time of the year after our longest and a long summer and the driest start to winter. And don't have time to delve into where those odour sources are, and that could include things such as drying lakes. What we are focused on is on this application, and odour has been vigorously investigated and proved by our own odour expert, Mr. John Hurley, who is online at the moment. The reporting findings and the recommendations by Mr. Hurley have not only been distributed to the various government agencies, but have been peer reviewed by the Shire's own independent expert consultant. And this point we say is also important. There's been a fairly extensive period of back and forth, and we say no stone has been left unturned. Therefore, we submit that it should be reasonably concluded that any emissions from the proposal will be acceptable and rigorously managed, particularly as a result of the recommended conditions. And we've spent a fair bit of time poring over them to make sure that we were comfortable with them. And as a final point, I'm pleased to report that DWER's licensing branch that deals with waste industries have also assessed the application across all environmental aspects, including odour, and they have a draft works approval ready to be issued, which is simply awaiting the DAP's or the panel's planning approval, should hopefully be today. So if you do have any questions from me, I'm happy to answer them. I will defer to Mr. Hurley, though, if they are technical questions in respect to odour. Scientific questions require, or of a scientific nature, require a scientific response by those qualified to make them. Again, I thank the Shire for what has been a fairly exhaustive period of liaison. We are satisfied with the conditions. And on that note, I'd be happy to answer any particular questions about the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, questions? Nima, you have a question?
Yes, I have a few questions, mainly clarification. You answered about the emergency access way. So my understanding from what you've said is the emergency access way will need to be constructed prior to the actual operation of the facility?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And now my next question is, you've mentioned staff accommodation and associated utilities. Is that under a separate development application or is it part of this? Because I couldn't see any diagrams on that.
That will be under part 2. So it will be a separate development application.
Okay, so you're looking at
Not part of this application. Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. That's good. The next one I had, okay, we go to odours. I understand you're saying this is for a new facility, and I agree with you. What is the biggest difference between your existing and your new facilities?
The biggest difference is not only procedural. The composting in itself seems simple in terms of the way the material is received, and then the way it's handled and processed. But it's more to do with the built form, the cocoons and the enclosures, and then the biofilters and the stacks, particularly when there's going to be, and we've agreed to particular controls on particle emissions. At the moment, you have a facility which is not subject to the same the same parameters, and that's probably the best way that I can explain it to you.
Okay. The next question I have is, right, you're going to get to your commissioning stage and so forth. How do you plan to actually manage the odours? And as you go through commissioning, there will be problems there because you're going through that process. Do you have, and you've mentioned that you've got a licence, a works approval. Of course, I understand we don't know the conditions. Have they also been conditioned during your commissioning period?
Sorry, when you said commissioning or decommissioning, we're talking about the current proposal, aren't we?
We're talking about the current proposal here. I'm not talking about the previous one. You'll go through another process anyway. But for the current one, when you are commissioning, you will have, certain issues, odours, because you're going through a commissioning process. Do you have in your works approval or in any other approvals where you've got some conditions in terms of how that is to be managed?
Yeah, we as planners, it's really been Talus that have been instrumental in putting together the works approval. So I'm unfortunately not in a position to answer any questions about that. What I can say though, with the suite of conditions proposed, even during the initial startup, or as you said, the commissioning phase, in addition to the monitoring, there has to be a contingency plan if operations aren't going the way they are intended. And I would have thought that includes operations in full or in part coming to a stop until alternative arrangements have been made to deal with whatever that particular concern may be. That's certainly my understanding of the odour management contingency plan. It makes provision for the fact that even once it is operational, it does require ongoing attention and monitoring, and something is not working the way it should, then there will be an onus on the applicant to do something about it.
Okay. Thank you for that. The next one I wanted to ask was, are you a zero discharge site? Are your licenses under zero discharge?
I'm afraid I can't answer that question again. Maybe John can, or maybe more of a question you don't know yourself.
John should know.
Yeah. No, sorry, I can't answer that one. Maybe Mr. Hurley can. Is Mr. Hurley with us?
I am, yes. Good morning. Sorry, I didn't realise I was muted. I would suspect, well, my experience with composting facilities of this nature is that the nature of the waste composting process relies on there being no discharge after the process of composting itself. So no waste discharge, mind you. So without having any more information than my own experience in composting facilities, I would assume that the inputs coming in versus what goes out should be a zero waste output.
Right, so it's a circular. It's a circular. Everything is maintained on site.
Absolutely, it should be, yes. I'm sure Seawise can or Talus can verify that, but I can't see any reason why it would not be.
Okay. Another question I've got is parking. When I looked at your traffic impact statement, you're saying 68 and you're saying 25. Is it because you're staging it? Just wanted to clarify that.
So it will be part of the staging process. So most of the employees are from the existing facility. And it will be expected that most of those employees will slowly transition to the new facility over time.
Okay. And my last question is, in the plan, it has been noted that there is an alignment of a particular proposed regional road. There's an alignment to it. So you mentioned that overall you think it's not going to go ahead. However, has your development taken into account the proposed regional road?
The proposed regional road is towards the north of the lease area, so it's completely out of the way from the actual facility. It is noted that this proposed road is under the sub-regional framework, and that's about as much information as we have. However, it would actually benefit the site from a bushfire perspective once that road goes through, as well as Mr. Algieri was touching on before. It will provide 2 access ways. So yes, the facility has been designed on the current site, but then also for the future as well. Okay.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
I can provide a quick follow-up, if I may, to your earlier questions, Councillor. I've been advised that as part of the works approval, there is, in fact, what they call a validation report, which is a condition to say that there is an obligation for the facility to operate and be built in accordance with the plans and the approval. So there's an ongoing obligation on that front. The only discharge, getting back to your question, really should be clean stormwater and the filtered particles through the biofilter in terms of odour. There's certainly no leachate to leave the site and no other waste to be discharged. So hopefully that's helpful for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers, did you have any? Yes, I think I can see your hand up.
Yes, through the chair. I have a question. My first question is probably more suited to Mr. Hurley. In your experience, have you had any other facilities like this upgrade their technology in relation to their odour control measures, and what has been the outcome of that, if you have?
Thanks for the question. I have, yes. There is a couple of composting facilities I've worked at for many, many years, or done work for many years, and yeah, it's quite a common thing for composting facilities in certain built-up areas or otherwise, where the process is encapsulated, for lack of a better word, or contained, and the odours are extracted and passed through a treatment system, and overall odour mitigation positive outcome reflects that. So biofilters are very reliable for this type of work. The odour capture is quite simple, for lack of a better way of explaining it, and these are fairly standard practices, I would say.
And just to follow up then, I guess, feedback from those potentially affected communities that had complaints around that odour, that was lessened due to those upgrades?
Well, the existing facility is essentially an open air composting facility. It has no real odour control. Essentially has no odour control in most respects. And this facility intends to have full odour control. So you're taking all of those exposed odours to atmosphere and you're controlling them, you're encapsulating them, and turning them into a controlled odour emission source that passes through biofiltration before atmosphere. So you won't have odour characters emitted from the new facility that in any way resemble what comes from the existing facility on the basis of that odour capture and control system.
Thank you. I have another question, probably for Mr. Algieri, in relation to bushfire management. A lot of the documentation was focused around external bushfires impacting the site and those control measures. What, I guess, is in place, or what is any different to the new site compared to the site that's in existence now, to mitigate against the fires that are actually started within those compost piles? Because from my knowledge, I would just about say nearly every fire call out to that site we currently have, those potential fires, usually they're just smouldering piles of mulch, they are started within that site. They're not started from outside ember attack. And so I know there's some reference to the size and the height and the moisture levels of stockpiled mulch and the distance between the mulch piles. How are those parameters that have been put in place for the new site any different to what is currently happening on the existing site?
Thank you for your question. I think Mr. Hurley hit the nail on the head, that you're going from fairly unsophisticated open air facility, and I personally do know exactly what you mean, because some distance from this site and another local government, I live next door to, well, my parents live next door to a composting facility, and in an open air situation, the risk of fires is quite great. We've got a controlled and enclosed environment here where there is regulation of temperature, moisture, and humidity and so forth. So it's important to emphasise that this will be a highly managed environment, and certainly DWER, Department of Water Environmental Regulation, have got numerous standards and guidelines to regulate these types of facilities over time. So in short, I don't believe that any concerns about fire as they have been with the current facility should be immediately translated over to the new site.
And that's notwithstanding, DFS have noted that the 50,000 litre allocation is not really sufficient as it stands, that there is potentially room for some sort of movement in that area to bring that more in line with what they would be expecting in the form of extra water sources or additional firefighting capabilities.
CWIS, as told us numerous times, are acutely aware that with a regulator constantly watching, it's in their interest that they have no downtime and smooth operations. In the transitioning from stage one, which is essentially to set up badly needed FOGO operation, which they can't have where they are, and in then dealing with stage two, which is the relocation of existing services, I'm certain that if they become aware that an improved or an increased water supply is required, it's in their own interest to get that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions of the presenters? Just Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. A couple of questions. Just confirmation in terms of transition of the current activity and the proposed activity. So is there a transition? Will the current site stop?
Yes.
It will stop?
The current site is a leasehold situation which is coming to an end, and either in the report or our own application, within 24 to 36 months, 2 to 3 years after the establishment of stage one, which is in essence the FOGO facility, that site comes to an end and all operations then continue on the proposed site before you.
So there potentially is going to be a transition.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. The sort of follow-up question and a lot of discussion about odour, I'm sure in the RAR I read that the nearest dwelling sensitive receptor is 2.5 kilometres away.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So based on DEWA's guidelines for buffers, the nearest sensitive receptor is way outside that. Is that correct as well?
Correct. It's an unusual situation in that the site itself is 1,609 hectares or thereabouts. But the applicants have only got a lease area which is much smaller, so it's 269. So it's a large rural site. By the time you get to the other side of the freeway to the west, then you've got largely a concentration of urban development all the way to the coastline. So you've got a huge property of nothing in terms of a rural, undeveloped rural lot, but then you do have concentrations of special residential and then urban development. So it goes from 0 to 100, but I think it is important that that's 2.5 kilometres away. The difficulty with this one, and it's clear in the submissions, is that there is an existing facility, and that existing facility is in amongst other odour emitters. And as I said earlier, I couldn't think of a worse time for this to be advertised, which was over summer months when you've generally got more of an odour problem. And then it's been a late start to our winter here. So it's hard to disentangle this from the current environment when, as decision makers, I understand you need to be looking at the application that's before you. And all I can do is emphasise that FOGO was the driver. Well, there's a couple of drivers as to why they're doing this. It's not just a quote unquote expansion. The lease area is coming to an end. DCWise acknowledges there's been issues where they are. But they want to move to better technology and better practice. It's in their own interest. Otherwise, operations do become difficult. And I think we all know that waste and recycling is fairly central to the functioning of our city and our state. It's an important part of our sustainable future. The difficulty is going to be, where do you put these things? Because they can't be too far out. And in many respects, this is the perfect site.
No, and the reason I ask the question is often the DAPs are asked to consider proposals where there are DEWA guidelines, buffer guidelines.
You're only 1 kilometre.
Yeah, and we're often asked to concede some buffer area. In this case, the guidelines, DEWA's guidelines are 1 kilometre. The nearest receptor's way outside that. Yeah, okay, all right. No further questions from me.
Thank you. Just one small question, and is with FOGO, how do they propose to deal with contamination? Maybe it's not a question.
It's a pretty broad question to end off.
Would you like me to make a comment on that?
Yeah, John, you might be the best person to.
Well, the way FOGO is managed at a transfer station, for example, there's one of them in Canning Vale, is the wastes come in, they're dumped on the tip floor, and they go through a pretty simplistic trommel separation process. So under the assumption that FOGO coming in is as clean as practicable, the trommel separator, or might be a magnetic separator, or there might be two in tandem, something like that in tandem or in line. The waste is passed through the trommel separation, and there's, as I said, magnetics or otherwise will pull out some metals and bits and pieces. That contaminated waste is pulled out of that process. The FOGO that's then been decontaminated goes into the next stage of composting, and the contaminated waste is stored and baled and then removed off site and sent to wherever they send these things to nowadays. I'm assuming if not landfill, it would be a waste to energy, I expect. It's a pretty straightforward decontamination process, though.
Thank you. I received something from my local government recently, and apparently we're behaving very well. It's I think they said 2% or something like that. So
right.
Yeah. Sorry, but it just prompted the question. So we might move to Luke Turvey. Luke, did you wish to make any comment further to the Responsible Authority report or discussion today?
No comments, but happy to answer any questions that any members may have.
Thank you. Any questions of the city's officer?
Presiding member, I do. Sort of more about strategic planning framework. I understand the Nambalup industrial area is to the south of this site.
Correct.
Yeah. From a strategic planning perspective, is this area identified for an activity other than rural in the future?
It is. So the land directly abutting the southern boundary of the property is part of the Nambalup Industrial Precinct. It is quite a large precinct that at full build out, it is expected to house 33,000 employees.
Okay.
Yes, for industrial purpose.
Yeah, and so
innovation, sorry.
Sure, thank you. So it's a big industrial site, and the land to the north of Nambalup, which is currently rural, where the proposed use is identified?
I actually couldn't answer that. The very northern boundary of this property actually then goes into another shire. I believe there was some urban land, at least under the Peel framework. But the issues that we've been having, or that were the key considerations in regard to odour and so on, related more to land to the west as opposed to the north. So there were not concerns raised with potential land use conflicts with land to the north.
Okay, presiding ask for the question.
Keep going.
Yeah, so the land to the north is within the city of Rockingham, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and I noticed in the RAR the proposal was referred to the city of Rockingham. Did they provide any comment?
No, the application was referred to both Rockingham and the city of Mandurah due to the number of people residential in the case of Mandurah, and more in regard to Rockingham, they had actually been involved in a number of the investigations about the Keralat site. So yeah, but both local governments that were contacted did not provide any comment.
Okay. Thank you.
Just if I could just add to that, the Keralat land is land that's owned by the state government under the control of Development WA. Around about a third of it is within the Shire of Murray. Development WA have been doing some work to attract investors on a leasehold arrangement on that land over the last 3 or 4 years. Seawise is one of those operators that have been going through a registration of interest process. They've done some initial planning that accommodates the east-west proposed regional road under the planning frameworks, and have identified, I think there's four leasehold sites for a range of large land take and or uses that require large buffers. And that principle is being established in the Shire's draft local planning strategy and new town planning scheme that's going through the process at this point in time.
Okay, Mr. Peake, just to clarify, so the Development WA own the land to all the land to the north,
including the subject site.
Yeah, thank you.
And part of their incentivisation is constructing the emergency access road.
That's right. So they've constructed, or the Shire constructed it, but at the cost of Development WA, the extension of Gull Road, which has recently been undertaken and provides access to this leasehold site. And then they'll be funding the further eastward expansion of that emergency access road in the second half of this year. It's planned at this stage.
They've also been integral in arranging for the emergency access way that will be operating in the interim. So they've been going through the negotiations, but they are looking to engage the Shire to do the construction works of the emergency access way. And our latest indication is that is expected to commence the construction in approximately July.
So it's soon.
Very close, just finalising the last of the land access matters to the eastern side, but I believe they have got in principle agreement.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Tony, you were...
No, I fled. Thank you.
Panel members, any questions of the city's administration? I haven't asked already. Okay. Yeah, so just in relation to the condition 26B, it's a sort of a little unusual, but I understand the circumstances. I'm comfortable that it covers it. I think I have any other. No, I don't have any other questions. So if there's no further questions, we can move to the item, which is Part D. As I mentioned, number 320, lot 9,500, Gull Road in Carrolup, carbon recycling facility. We have a responsible authority report with a recommendation to approve the application, subject to a number of conditions. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the application? That's moved.
Would I like to, sorry, can I please move it with a slight amendment under point 26?
Yes.
I would like to add point C. I do have wording here that I can read out, but in essence, it is to add an additional water source to be stationed on that site. So I can read it out. Point C, section 6.1, developer landowner responsibilities. Prior to the commencement of the use, a minimum 10,000 litre bulk water tanker to be provided to ensure a sufficient additional water source to assist with managing any fire to eventuate at the facility, with the tanker being available on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers, I might take that as a separate amendment, because there might need to be some discussion on that specific matter. So if you're happy to, I'll see if there's a seconder for the motion before us, and then we can deal with, then you can foreshadow that amendment once we've got the substantive motion underway. Are you happy with that? It just gives us an opportunity to focus on that individual one if panel members want to do so.
Sure, I would prefer if it be part of the motion in front of us. It's not in relation to the water and DPS making mention that it doesn't have enough water there. I think it's reasonable.
It's just that, and I'm not saying there won't be, but it's just that if there's not support for it, the whole motion,
sure,
whole substantial motion could fall over. So, but we can deal with it separately if that's okay. So, do we have a seconder for the motion as presented in the RAR? That's seconded, Nima. Thank you. So, yeah, over to you, Councillor Rogers, to speak to the item.
Well, I think the Shire have done a good job to work through those issues of the complaints of the concerns around the odours. I do think they're valid, and I do think they should be, front of mind when making our decision. But I think they have done a good job of implementing different mechanisms to combat and mitigate those odours as best they can, even down to the fact of how that biofilter system will work. It's got a mechanism to allow for more filters to be actually placed in that system should, it not be deemed as effective as we're hoping it will be, which I'm sure it will be. So I think they have gone above and beyond to really try and, listen to those concerns that were raised as part of the submissions received from the public. And I think the outcome of that will be tenfold better than what it is currently at the current site. So,
thank you. Now, did you want to move your proposed amendment?
yes, I would. As I said, I don't. The issue that I have in relation to the bushfire is that, and I do acknowledge the Ms. Algieri's comments about it being a different system and it being enclosed, but there is a lot of emergency services time, volunteers' time put into essentially just pumping water into these piles on a quite regular basis over the summer has been their experience over the last 5 years at least. And so I think that combined with DFES's comments that really 50,000 litres isn't enough water, I think the provision to have a 10,000 litre bulk water tanker on site to be able to, if one of these piles does happen to combust, it allows CWIs to manage that within their operations instead of relying on emergency services to essentially stand there for hours on end pumping water into piles of mulch. And so I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, I think that's a reasonable outcome.
Thank you. Is everyone clear on that motion? Without going through your words again, essentially it's, as you said, a 10,000 litre bulk water tanker to be on site.
Yes.
Yep. Do I have a seconder for that motion? No? So that lapses for want of a seconder. The motion is on the record, Councillor Rogers, but it's lost for or lapses for want of a seconder. Nima, as the seconder, you wish to speak to the item.
Yes, thank you, presiding member. Look, first of all, it's a very good proposal. It is within the statutory planning framework. It is very thorough, and the engineering and very detailed engineering studies has been conducted. Now, with concerns with odour, it has been investigated very, very rigorously, both by the proponent and also I commend the Shire to engage an external odour consultant, so I'm not giving it any bias. There is a significant engineering improvement and technology improvement from the existing facility to the new facility. And I think that will be on the benefit for addressing many of the concerns that has been expressed. And I'd like to say that I thank the Shire and the proponent for working together constructively with the numerous government agencies and ensuring their advice and recommendations have been appropriately conditioned. And I overall support the objective of the site, especially with the FOGO strategy, which is coming on to all local governments. And hence, on that basis, I support the report recommendation to approve the development application with the attached conditions.
Thank you. Tony, do you wish to speak?
Very briefly, presiding member, I'm prepared to support the motion. It's always very difficult to cite these sort of uses, but we live in an urban environment that generates waste, and we somehow have to find a suitable way of managing it. And this site, I think, based on best technology, will respond to what is actually required from an urban perspective. In terms of location, said it's isolated. It's a long way from sensitive receptors, so the context is, I think, appropriate. I also note that the RAR talks about SPP 2.5 And the Commission addresses what's an appropriate rural land use and specifically addresses waste management, because there's no perfect site, and these things have to be isolated, and a rural zone is where they need to be located. So it's consistent with the strategic planning framework as well. So for those reasons, I'm prepared to support the motion.
Thank you. Yes, I'm also supporting the motion. Further to Mr. Harris's comments, rural zones are a bit of a peculiarity in some respects, in that, I mean, essentially they look at maintaining rural landscapes and protecting important agricultural activities. But on the other hand, particularly when you get them near intense urban environments like around Perth, they do have other important uses, and I've seen applications for that require larger land parcels, and some of those have been like schools and even church and community facilities that require usually a lot larger sites that are difficult to find in an urban area. And they also, it's noted in the objectives for the scheme that they can, intent for the zone, that they can accommodate public purposes. And as Tony said, this sort of use is something that is appropriately located, given all other protections in place in a rural zone. And just in relation to the proposal itself and the assessment, it's been through an exhaustive and very thorough assessment, and also like to compliment the city's officers on the thoroughness of the report, because it's quite a complex matter to deal with, and I think it set out all the issues and explained them all very well. So I have no hesitation in supporting the application. Something I did learn today, that you can actually measure odour, which was interesting to me. I don't know how you do it, but it's something to do with particles per cubic metre or something. But anyway, well done. So with that, I'll move back to the mover of the motion, Councillor Rogers, to close debate.
I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So that concludes all the items on the agenda. I've received no advice on any general business. There's no SAT applications or Supreme Court appeals to report. And I'll declare the meeting closed at 11:26, and thank you all for your participation and attendance. Thank you.